They've given me a gavel. I feel the power I didn't have before. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for Sisters, the city sponsoring us and allowing me to use their space. This is the DMAC. I'm Neil Bryant, the facilitator and chair. And we're going to approve some minutes in a second and then go to public comments. And for those who offer public comments, you're gonna have 3 minutes each, because there's enough of you that we don't have to go to 2 minutes and 48 seconds. But as you give your comments, if it relates to how the group has been composed and what we're supposed to do, et cetera, that's fine. You can say anything you want, but our focus is on 5 districts. And so as you testify, that's where we'd like you to concentrate. But again, you can say anything you want. So let us go with the minutes from the last meeting. They're attached. Are there any corrections, changes? If not, could I have a motion to approve? So moved. Second approves. And Carol seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. A couple other housekeeping things. It helps for the members of the committee to raise their hand, because if 2 of you or 3 of you talk at once, it's harder to differentiate on the minutes who's commenting. So if you raise your hand, I'll see you and I'll recognize you, and then we'll just have one speaker at once. So let's go to the public comments, and we'll begin with Terry Mullen. Is that correct? We'll set this aside for a moment and maybe Terry will show up. How about Rodney Cooper? Welcome. You can sit in the chair. If you could say your name and your address, please.
My name's Rodney Cooper. My address is 69274 Stetson, Sisters, Oregon. And I'm here today just with just one concern that may have already been addressed, but my concern in a nutshell is that the rural people being underrepresented. So when we're districting, we want to make sure that that's considered. I know our founding fathers, the smaller colonies, had this issue when they were founding our country of being fearful that the masses would override their being. And so I just want the committee to keep in mind that we don't want to have these districts all pied into one central city where the masses can outvote the rural people. That was my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl Pellerin. And by the way, we have a timer up here. So
Hi, I'm Cheryl Pellerin, and I live here in Sisters. I'm also on city council, so I'm used to sitting up there and not down here. But thank you for serving on this committee. 2 items are related to thinking of the future. One of them, I know that you're having to work with 2020 census data as far as population goes. We're in between 2 census here. And the City of Sisters is currently amending our urban growth boundary. One of the data sources for that was the coordinated population forecast for Deschutes County. This is put out by our Population Research Center at the Portland State University. And it gives quite a bit of forecasting information for you guys. I think would be a good data source as you're planning these districts. And just to note, our City of Sisters is projected to increase 130% in population in the next 25 years. We're already into 3 years into that. And La Pine is projected to increase by 87%. So some things to consider. So I'm leaving this here for you. And then the second item I had was, again, around thinking about the future. You're being tasked with developing a proposed map, district map, but we all know that if that is approved and voted upon, that it will be a living document. It will need to be modified in the future. So I'm proposing that the scope of this committee also consider providing some guidelines around how that map should be updated, because you are going to be the experts. And if after you're done with this committee, if you take all that experience and knowledge and leave, and we've lost that. So considering when the map should be updated, how it should be updated, and who should be updating it, I think is also something that should be within scope of what you're doing. Because you're going to be the ones that know how you got to this decision. And that guidance could help the next group that has to update this, or whoever it's going to be. Those are my 2 items. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you,
serving.
Carol.
Welcome to Sisters.
Andrea Bloom.
Hello, I'm Andrea Blum and I live at 776 South Cottonwood. That's not my mailing address, so that's not what's on the form. We have a unique situation here in Sisters. I wanted to talk to you today because I was on the previous attempt to have a home rule charter for the county, which included having districts and a greater number of commissioners. And it was an interesting experience. This was in the mid, 2006 or 8 period of time. People who came onto the committee, similar to how you were appointed, some were definitely in favor of expanding the commission. Some thought the commission was fine the way it was, and some came in with really not much of an opinion. We did an extensive month-long review of counties that had different formats and how they worked. We went extensive review of how the existing county commission was operating. And disclaimer, I actually worked for the county commissioners prior to this, so I was familiar with that. When we got to the point where we were forming a consensus, it turned out that people on the committee did feel that it was important to have a home rule charter. And as part of that, that we extend the number of commissioners and re-emphasize that the commissioners were policy-making body, because we felt that they had gotten into almost running some of the departments. The departments were split on, this commissioner was kind of the support for this group and this was the other group. And so we kind of felt that the commission was getting away from the true policymaking side and becoming more bosses and involved in everyday minutia. When word started filtering out what was likely to be the proposal that was going to come, the unanimous consensus was going to be more commissioners and by district. Pressure came from movers and shakers in the community at that time and the county commissioners that proposal would never be approved by the commission. So it was fruitless to propose it. I felt we should propose it. Oh, sorry. I propose it anyway so that the commission would have to explain why they didn't approve it. Others felt, no, let's just take that out and just go for approval of a home rule charter and leave the other changes for some other time. Comes to a vote, the vote goes down because people say you didn't make any changes. So why should we vote to allow a home rule charter if you didn't make any changes? So be careful that when you do come to a consensus, that you don't feel pressured that, well, that wasn't what we were looking for.
Thank you, Andrea. I think this is Monica. And I'm sorry, I can't quite read your last name.
okay.
So if you
Yeah,
could give your name and address.
Monica Thomasy, I live here in Sisters. So I feel like this whole process is unclear, and even as you introduced it today, you said, you tried to clarify saying we're focusing on 5 districts. That was not a complete sentence. There was no verb in there. It's still not clear. We need like an actual statement. What, and this, I'm not trying to criticize, but this is an example of this entire process. How we got here is unclear. Where it's going is unclear. And that's not good for trust. So first and foremost, you need to be really clear on what this is actually about and what it isn't about. And I suggest putting that in writing and sharing that. So I do feel like the commissioners, the 5 commissioners, which we voted on that we needed 5, not 3, need to be working for the whole county. I am concerned about the lack of unity, and if you divide it up, that each person's going to care about their own little district and not the entire county. And I don't think that's very helpful at all. We voted to make sure that these commissioners were unaffiliated. I think it was 64% said we wanted them. So this effort seems to be supported by the 2 existing commissioners that are Republicans. And I think that's tone deaf in the context of a county that said, no, we want this county commissioner governance to be unaffiliated, not affiliated with the party. So there's a trust issue that this is being pushed by 2 that happen to be affiliated with a party. And it just seems to be unabashedly an attempt at gerrymandering. So I think you have a trust issue here with why are we doing this? It's not clear who asked for this. And I'd like to see the mapping commission come out with a decision that this is not a good idea to have a split. I hope that the question is, do we or don't we have 5 districts? It's not clear. It sounds to me like the 2 Republican commissioners want you to decide what the 5 districts are. But to me, the question is, should we even have 5 districts? And the answer, I think, to be fair to the citizens that voted to say we want unaffiliated commissioners, I think you need to, at this point, say, no, we're not going to split it up into 5 districts. Wait till you have the 5, and then you can revisit it then after you've got the 5 that are selected or voted in. Thank you.
Thank you. Bryce Kellogg.
Hi, I am Bryce Kellogg. I live in Bend. And I attended the last meeting, and that made me feel that I think it would behoove this group to acknowledge the inherently partisan nature of this process. The base case in Deschutes County, having 5 at-large commissioners, is favoring, the growing majority of liberal voters in the county. Deschutes County was only 10% of the counties in the country moved left in the from between 2020 and 2024, and Deschutes County was one of those counties. So it's a growing majority. No matter how you draw these districts, whatever your intention is, you're going to be empowering some voters in Deschutes County, and you're going to be disempowering other voters in Deschutes County. I think that to do that in a responsible and fair way, you need to be looking at data to determine how each district is going to be made up, in partisan lean, demographic lean, and geographic. So I feel like you need to bring data to this problem if you want to draw fair districts. Districts that are unintentionally unfair are still unfair districts. Districts that are unintentionally partisan gerrymandered are still gerrymandered. So I feel like the best thing for this committee to do would be to bring data into the process to demonstrate that the districts you create are not doing those things, that they're not unfair and they're not favoring one party over the other. I think that there are resources available that this committee could use to do a better job of drawing districts. There are websites, many websites that were developed around the 2020 redistricting process that help people submit district plans to analyze district plans. One of those is Dave's Redistricting. Right now, any of you could sign up for that website. You could set up a map and you could draw districts for Deschutes County for commissioners that would tell you the population, but they would also tell you, demographic makeup of those districts and partisan lean of those districts. And it will allow you guys to compare proposed districts and decide which you thought was fairer. So I feel like you guys should work to come to this with clear eyes and acknowledge all the data rather than trying to close your eyes to the partisan nature of the process and then maybe check at the end. I feel like you need to work through the whole process before with all the data that you can get in front of you. So thanks.
Thank you. John Nielsen.
Good afternoon. My name is John Nielsen. I am a resident of Redmond. So in 2022, Measure 9-148 was put before the voters to strip the partisan labels from the county commissioners. The majority at the time of commissioners opposed that. However, the people voted and they decided that they at least wanted to take a stab at nonpartisan leadership. In 2024, we had Measure 9-173, which proposed to the people that a 5-member commission would be more representative than a 3-member commission. Again, the majority of commissioners opposed, but it passed. And so now you are charged with deciding what a map should look like if we carve the county up into 5 districts. And I put to you that you are being asked to decide which limbs to amputate before you have decided whether or not the patient is even sick. This is not a foregone conclusion. We should be putting it to the voters as to whether or not they view districts as a positive step forward or as a further divide in an already politically divided area of the state and our homes. We have people who are living in the rural districts who don't feel represented. We have people in the urban districts who don't feel represented. I don't believe that drawing districts is going to add that. I think it's going to further that divide. It's going to put rural versus urban. It's going to put Redmond against Bend fighting over scarce resources. And I think we can and should be doing better. And I think Mr. Henderson in the last meeting stated that he wanted the comments from the citizens to focus on what the map should look like. And I don't think that's the right question. I think the question is, should the map exist at all? And so I would encourage you to take a moment and decide that you do not have to make a recommendation. You could put it back to say, we should put it just the raw vote to the people, should we do this? And if so, then reconstitute the commission in a way that is fair and just, and that the then county commissioners do not have the ability to influence or adjust the maps after the commission makes its recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Tripp. And Mr. Tripp has actually submitted a map for us to consider.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Tripp, a Bend resident of 23 years. After last week's meeting, I undertook an exercise of trying to draw up some potential districts that might result from applying the guiding principles that were presented at that meeting. And I want to emphasize first that those maps are not a proposal for a map for you. I did this to try to gain some insight into what mapping would or wouldn't reveal in terms of the implications and results of that process. I found that given the constraints combined with voting precincts, there are really limited options for trying to develop maps with some significance. And the maps I submitted show that if you apply those principles in a straightforward way, you end up with some obviously problematic subdivisions of the county, in my opinion. And so also thinking about that and trying to see what that really means, there are multiple questions come up and I put that in my written submission. So I'll conclude just by emphasizing that I think any proposal for dividing the county into consumer-specific, commissioner-specific districts should answer some basic questions as part of the proposal. How does the districting proposal improve representation of citizens' interests and improve community cohesiveness? And how does the districting proposal improve efficiency and effectiveness of county government? And I encourage this committee to incorporate those into their process so that if they do make a recommendation, they specifically address those points. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this.
Samantha Smith.
Hello, and thank you again for allowing me to come and speak to you today. Again, I wanted to start off couple of different points. I do appreciate the fact that you did extend our time to 3 minutes today after listening to the input that people had said about this not having enough public input. So thank you for that. However, with that in mind, and I also did hear the request that we speak to specifically the districting and building the maps and helping you all to identify that and work that out. However, I also would be remiss if I didn't point out that this process has been rushed. It is being pushed through without, I mean, it's giving you guys till November to come up with this. And I don't think that's enough time when we look at other communities, other counties in the state who took much longer and had a lot more time to do this. In addition to that, I think that I would like to point out that our current system of at-large voting isn't ideal for representation even then, because it is a winner at large, but it makes more sense to look at proportional representation so that all people within Deschutes County communities are represented. Let's just take Redmond, for example, because I will speak then to the districts that you guys wanted me to talk about. If we looked at Redmond, or actually Deschutes County, I think that if it was districts, Redmond should have their own district because the growth of Redmond has been significant. If we look at the 2020 census data, that was 33,274 people in 2020. And the census estimates in 2023 were for 37,009 people. And that's based on population, not on registered voters. So again, if we just do districts, there's not going to be, Redmond would be a disenfranchised community. I think that more needs to be looked at for this. The fact that when this is going to be put on the ballot, it's also when we're looking at having the 5 Deschutes County commissioners voted in. I think that it makes more sense if there is going to be, as one of the previous speakers noted, to have it put to the voters, whether or not to have districts, that should be put to the voters, not what the map's going to look like. And I think it should be done when there's 5 elected commissioners on the commission, as the voters wished for. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Greg Bryant. And again, no relation.
Greg Bryant, 19-2 Choctaw, Deshusboro Woods. And I gave you a copy of a map that I took a few hours to go through and analyze it. I went through precincts as make an analysis for the 5 districts per the 2020 census only. And I came up with what you have in front of you. If you take the population, if you take the population by district, highest to lowest, there's a 6% difference. Now, if you take a look at using those same districts, if you take consideration the voters, there's a 13% difference between the highest district and the lowest district. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is if you're using only the precincts, it's going to be very difficult for you guys to come up with.
Greg, could you lean towards the mic a little
Oh,
more?
I'm sorry.
No, no problem.
It's going to be very difficult for you to come up with. If you're using precincts, it's going to be very difficult for you to come up with precincts with in the same area at 5% difference between the highest and lowest. And if you're going to use something other than precincts, the smaller areas, you might be able to do that. But I know that you're going to be working with different categories, and that's going to make it even harder for you guys to come up with districts. So, and I'd also like to think that maybe whatever districts what you come up with, I'd like to have it not necessarily get approved by the commissioners. I'd like to have it go to the voters first, because the commissioners might say no, where the voters might say yes. So, and that's my contention. And also, like I said last time, I think it would be nice if we had more than one map that you guys came up with. Give their different options for the commissioners. I mean, can't have very many, maybe 2 or 3, but that's mine. Is there any questions?
Thank you for your testimony and your maps. Yeah. Is Sari here now? Oh.
Good afternoon. My name is Terry Mallon. I am at 16899 Canyon Crest Drive here in Sisters. I came to lend my voice to the cacophony that I've heard that districts is not the way to go, that we should vote at large and nonpartisan so that all of the county is represented. I understand the, having grown up in a rural county, I understand the concerns about rural versus metro divide, but I think that that's one of the failings of our current system of government is that districts can lend themselves to, well, gerrymandering, just to leave it at that. So that's all I have for you. Thank you for my consideration.
Thank you. That concludes the online, that's right. Is there anyone online that would like to provide some public testimony? If you do, please raise your hand so we can see you and recognize you.
Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. My name is Mary Fleischman, resident of Bend, 39 years. I'm really, and I've already shared this with the county commissioners, and I believe Mayor Keebler, I sent you a brief email. There's a lot of time, energy, money going into this with not even knowing if this is what the voters want. And so I have a real concern for that, and especially as what was already spoken about being nonpartisan and waiting until we have 5 commissioners and then taking time to actually take a look at if this is what is needed. But I also think that you guys are tasked with coming up with some additional options, and that being that either one option being at large, one option being 5 districts, and one option being 4 districts, 1 at large, simply because, what if there's somebody that's in my district and it's not a person that I feel would be appropriate for the job? I don't have any options. And I find that that's a real issue for me. So I know that the commissioners have tasked you with, okay, got to come up with this mapping, but this could possibly totally backfire. You put all this in there and people at large go, you know what, we don't want that right now. So I think that you should be able to look at some other options and present, whatever you do present to the commission, or have it go back to the commissioners again. And I will continue to tell them, this thing sucks. This is not what we voted for. We voted for 2 additional bodies on the commission, did not vote for having districts, and it's being rushed. And I'm very uncomfortable with that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mary. Is there anyone else online?
I see none.
Okay, thank you. Then that will conclude the public comments for today's meeting. Right on time. Pardon? You're right on time. Oh, thank you. In our last meeting, we had a discussion about community of interest and how to define it. And
Sorry, Neil, can I just ask, can we respond to some of the comments? Is that possible right now? Does that make sense or not?
But usually we don't.
Okay, well,
It's,
my only concern is I hear repeated amount of what I think is misinformation that seems to suggest that we're putting something together that's going to be binding without voter approval, and that's not my understanding of the process. So I think it would be useful to clarify that at least for folks.
That's correct. To do the districts, the commission has to agree to put it on the ballot in May, and then the voters will decide whether or not to have the districts.
My understanding, Drew, is that folks were asking, put the question to the voters, should we have districts or not? Then come back to this process. So I hope people weren't misunderstanding that this map does have to go through the voters, but I think that's what people were asking for.
Well, I've heard both, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure we
Good
were
to
clear about that.
Okay, going back, oh, yes, Carol.
Perhaps you could say how this was developed, because there seems to be some confusion as to how we came to be who we are. Did anybody else hear that?
Yeah, I heard.
Okay,
Please point.
just briefly, the 7 members here were appointed, all volunteers. The charge from the county is to do 5 districts, and we went back and said, do you want 5 districts or can there be other options? They said no, 5 districts. So that's what our charge is, and that's what we're doing. The timing on it is, oh, by the way, we're nonpartisan, and it's in our guidelines. We don't intend to do any gerrymandering. We're interested in good data, which is the 2020 census, and then voter registration, which is current daily. We will at some point, and hopefully today, we'll begin having more detailed discussions on some options that are available and what they look like, and begin the process of developing districts and maps. And then a report will go to the county commission with our recommendation, whatever that happens to be. And then they have to decide whether or not, probably in December, put it on the ballot or not. So that's the process. So hopefully that adds some clarification.
Just to clarify, this came from the Board of County Commissioners.
Correct.
Not through citizen initiative or anything like that.
It's Board of County Commissioners.
Right.
All right. Now the easy topic of guidelines or options for how to define communities of interest. The last time as we were talking about this, it's pretty subjective, and it's hard to put details on it. You could go with a very general definition, and we had that provided in the last meeting. If you get specific and on the data, we could do overlays of school districts, fire districts, irrigation districts. Because if you go rural, then you got to look at irrigation districts. Who's on farm deferral? Those types of things. And you could probably then develop a list of 20 different items to look at as you try to define what community of interest is. But then as you go through this process, I hope you've tried to do this in looking at the precincts and the different areas and cities and whatnot. That becomes more challenging when you have an area like Bend is 50% of the population. And so as you create 5 different districts, some of Bend will have to be used to balance out the population and the voters, registered voters, from a rural district with an urban district. And so how do you then compete that community of interest? It'll be different if you had 20 items there and 10 of them are rural and 10 of them are more urban. You know, is that a mix of the community of interest? And so as you talk about this today, decide how you want to define that, what criteria you want to look at if you want to be specific, or you can go back to the general definition and work with that. So that's what I'm thinking for the task right now for the next 45 minutes for this group to decide how they want to proceed. Yes, Bernie.
We have 2 common interests. We live in Central Oregon, and most people think the government, I didn't say it, but you know, so common interest should be just by population, because this one map this gentleman drew up, most of it covers city and rural. There's a combination of everything in there, and percentage-wise, off the voter registration, the variance is only 2.8%, and under the census, it's only 1.2%. So they're really tight on population, but Redmond would be Redmond, and I think there's city and rural in Redmond, and Sisters will cover in some of the other areas, because I know coming in here, downtown Sisters is very city, but coming in here, it's all rural. So they would, right off the bat, they're going by population, you're gonna have a mixture, and if the people, when they vote on their county commissioners, vote. You know, if you don't like your county commissioner and you didn't vote, you shouldn't complain.
Other comments? Melanie.
So I forwarded to the group the information sent to me by someone from the Secretary of State's office in one of the OARs that they have developed, that when they talk about not dividing communities of common interest, it says where urban neighborhoods, rural communities, or other communities can be identified, and an effort will be made to retain that community within a single district. It also says consideration will be given to market areas covered by local media. So I think those are good things for us to think about. We have cities in Deschutes County, but we also have urban unincorporated areas that I think we should identify and look at when we're dividing up the county, so that we're not drawing a line through Terrebonne or through other places in the county, Tumalo, places that aren't cities but are basically towns, though they are unincorporated. And there are in county records of these urban unincorporated areas, I think, or at least some idea of them that I think would be useful data to have. The city of Bend is a community of common interest. Like Neil said, there's no way not to divide up Bend as part of this process, but I think we need to really think about how and why we're doing that. And it's important to me also with the legal requirements that we have data around party registration and ethnic and language groups, because those are things that we are committing not to be unfair towards. And to the commenter's point, if we're sort of ignoring them, how do we know whether we're being fair or not? So I think we just need to have those be part of the analysis as well. But I think I would start with cities and unincorporated communities that are places of common interest when I'm thinking about that term.
Other comments? Yes, Ned.
Yeah, it seems to me that there is no definition of communities of interest. So we need to come up with something that we generally agree on. Otherwise, you're going to have 7 plans and no way to get to a consensus. It also seems to me we need to decide as a group whether we're going to look at everybody, the census, which is 5 years old, or the voters registration, which is current. And my personal bias is that voters registration is current and correlates well to the census data. Get less pushback on rapid growth areas like Redmond if we use voter registration versus everybody. So, and the voters are going to vote for this. So that seems to me to be a reason. But anyway, those two things, I think we need some sort of agreement on. Otherwise, you got 7 plans. What are you going to do with 7 plans? Who's ever the last?
Sir, we cannot hear him.
Sorry.
I have a follow-up.
Thank you. Okay,
Be sure to speak into the microphone.
there you go. If you acknowledge.
Just to follow up, legally, we're required to use population. Am I correct? City staff?
Is that on? We can, again, check with Dave Doyle, our legal counsel. The understanding is the draft or the guidelines coming from the state have the recommendation that populations are used and within the guidelines on specifically state within a certain percentage point, but historically that is how it is being drawn. Maps have been drawn and redistricted throughout the state, and so that is the guidelines we are providing for the starting point there.
Every county that I looked at did population, so I don't know anyone that does voter reg data.
So voter registration is not allowed, is that what you're saying?
I don't think legally that is I don't think that is, sorry, let me start over. We believe that you could use voter registration or census as far as a point. What we have done, and I'll let Steve interrupt me if I'm saying this incorrectly, is if you're doing it by precincts, that those numbers, even if you're doing consensus or census data or voter registration data, those numbers are going to be within approximately the same type of percentage points. Does that make sense?
Early on in this conversation, that was a question of what data are you going to use to draw these boundaries? Knowing that census data is dated, the recommendation or an option presented was that voter registration data is current, and that is an option. And that was something that was discussed by the Board of County Commissioners earlier on. And at that point, nobody flagged it as being illegal. I don't know there being any legal finding of not being able to use that information, but it's certainly something that could be looked into further.
And it's helpful when you look at the precincts. There are 50 in the county, and we have the census information population count. And then we have the registered voters after the adjustments for the precincts after the census, which is March 1st, 2020. And then the registered voters basically today. And the encouraging news is for the committee is generally they're fairly close. And that's very helpful. I think it's a sign that we're on the right track with the data that we're using. But Phil, you had a comment?
Well, you have a couple. So I'm fine with using the voter registration because I think we're halfway through a census period. I think that whatever we do for this next few years may be altered with the next census. That seems practical to me. We're not going to get it perfect where we can get close to what works good. My concern with community of interest is I think we almost, maybe it's just individually or we could as a group develop priorities, but there's different kinds of community interests. And I did like that the legal definition that we got after the meeting, was pretty broad. It refers to populations that share common social, cultural, racial, economic, geographic interests and should possibly be kept together within single electoral districts, ensure effective and fair representation. And there's other definitions that are helpful, but I look at it like, so if I think the idea of keeping cities and unidentified incorporated areas, even some of the larger resorts that are neither, maybe in districts is important. Another one is geography, because things that are happening at one part of the county aren't necessarily happening at the other end of the county. And one of the things we we gain with representation is one representative that really is very familiar with those issues. And I'll give an example would be when we had the high groundwater issues in South County, that didn't really concern many people in North County who live in a much drier climate and don't have they have 700-foot water tables and they have 7 foot. So there's things like that. Or if when Terrebonne was ODOT was going to put a couplet through there, it was a very important issue to people of North County, not only Terrebonne, but the people in Redmond, because they use it, the people at Crooked River Ranch. So those kinds of issues become regional. That wasn't very important in South County. And so if we're trying to get representation that is effective at being really more knowledgeable, which is one of the kind of selling points of districting, is it would be good to keep that kind of in mind. The third one I want to make is that not all government interests are the same to me. Like, for instance, I think it's more important that we keep fire districts in a district than I do school districts. One of the reasons is because the county has more interactions with fire districts than it really does with school districts. It doesn't have a very big role in schools, and they have their own, dynamics, but the overlap's different. And there's other things like that. There's road districts and that sort of thing. But I think prioritization, maybe it becomes just to each of us which matters, or we could try to identify through some process of different, which are our priorities. We could come up with our own. That's what I read the law to say, is that as long as there's a few tight restrictions, but we could come up with our own. So those are my thoughts.
And on the issue of not gerrymandering, that's one of our directions. And so it's a public record to see how everyone is registered to vote. Democrat, Republican, non-affiliated, and independents are the major party right now. So it's in that situation, it's probably a little more challenging and difficult to gerrymander because you have so many non-affiliated. But as a safety check, as we develop these districts, at some point, then we have to look at what the registration is, just to say, we didn't use this to determine who was going to be in this district because we didn't look at it then. But now that we've drawn this map and we're considering it, okay, let's take a look at it. And it's a public record. Anybody can do that anyway. But I think to give a check and balance on one of those criteria, we at least have to look at that at the end. Yes, Matt.
Yeah, I would argue that the geopolitical interests are one of the areas of common interest that probably should be looked at.
Okay.
What does that mean? What do you mean geopolitical?
Well, for example, I mean, if you've got an area that's, rural and maybe say 80% conservative versus another area in the city of Bend that's 80% the opposite. I would say those are opposite areas of common interest.
So you think we should keep those together?
Well, no, I'd say, it's something I think should be looked at some point as far as common areas of interest. For example, Redmond tends to be more conservative, say, than West Bend. It makes sense that they would be different districts.
So
geographically, they're also separate.
Sure.
But I'm just going to say that I see no reason why that should be excluded from what we look at, because it does create areas of common interest.
Question.
Carol.
So what is the difference between what you're saying and gerrymandering? Because if you're saying that these certain areas that are conservative, that they should have their own district, and people in Bend that are liberal should have their own district, in my mind, that's gerrymandering.
Well, it's all a matter of what you consider to be gerrymandering and what that is. If you're looking at an area, for example, Bend currently has a donut hole, in which case you've got district completely within another district, that's gerrymandering. Or the example of Central Oregon being connected to downtown Portland, where you've got long, narrow streaks that just try to align specific political as opposed to geographic areas. I'm just saying that I think that geographic certainly makes sense, But I don't think we should exclude looking at some of the other data also.
Yes,
I'd like to say something about, because a lot of people use the word gerrymandering. To me, gerrymandering is when one political party or political entity has enough clout that they can create a map that's basically what they want. That's not this county, really. We're very balanced. We've been balanced for really within 3,000 to 4,000 difference for 15 years between parties, and there's a massive amount of people that are non-affiliated or independents. And that is really this committee, and county government's one of the least partisan, I think, of any any level of government necessarily, because so much of it's not. So I just don't. That's used by a lot of people, but I don't. I think you have to have a majority, strong majority that basically does what they want. And in America, as we've seen lately, it can happen either way. But I don't see that as what's happening here.
Okay, Melanie.
I just do think we need to take those concerns seriously from the public, because we're sitting up here and this is not a balanced representation of the partisan makeup of our county. And so if we're gonna say we're not having one party or another control this process, we better be really careful about how we talk about these things. And I think starting from a place of voter registration is not a way to earn trust. I think, as the gentleman was pointing out, when we draw based, and I think strongly it should be based on population, we do need to check what we've drawn to see if there is an imbalance or if we are running afoul of the directive not to favor one party over another, certainly. And so I want that data involved in that way. But I don't agree with starting from a place of looking at where people are voting which way and then drawing from that. I think common interest has never been used that way. It is about communities. The Secretary of State rule says neighborhoods, right? So we're thinking about people that live near each other or engage in the same activities. In Bend, everyone pays taxes the same. They have utility bills. They have all those activities and things that they do in the city. And I think that's a lot of what common interest speaks towards. So that's what we think we need to talk about. Neil, I did want to talk about something you said earlier with the population in the voter reg. You sort of commented, well, they're mostly pretty close. I just looked at the first five precincts that are in Bend. The population, I took the population minus the voter registration counts, it's 6,713 difference. So I think if we start looking at voter reg instead of population, we are leaving out and missing a lot of people in the county. I think population is absolutely the way to go. I'm worried we have old population numbers, and I'm curious if we can look at some of the forecasts or the updated numbers that have been provided by PSU or other places to help us get a little closer to reality, make sure we're within those tight tolerances. But just wanted to point out the registration is missing a lot of people in each precinct still. And especially if you think about people who can't register to vote, but they live in those districts and they should have representation too. So.
And just to be clear, the census, which it counts all people, including those that don't vote, for instance, 17 and younger. Likewise, you don't have to prove citizenship to be included in the census. The purpose of the census is to find out everybody that's in a particular area. And then they do a good job once every 10 years in saying, okay, and here's where these people are located and how many are in a household, those sorts of things. And so that's the big difference between the population count and the current registered voters. And if we use additional information, and that usually comes from Portland State and their population center, it says, okay, Bend grew 2,000 people, but it doesn't tell you where it grew. So you don't know what precincts that would be in. That's the challenge. That it's good information, but it's not granular. And the same is true. They do all of the cities, Portland State does, and the unincorporated area, and they all grew, but we don't know what precincts and what areas they grew in. Now, the voter registration helps a little bit because you can see where more people have suddenly registered to vote than there were earlier. But that's the challenge in using something other than the census. But I think I sense consensus here that before we look at voter registration, we don't want to do that as a starting point. We want that to happen when we've actually drawn some districts to double check what the effect would be. But I think it'd be a bad, PR problem if we began in that direction. I think the other data that's available is a better place to start. Drew?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Couple things. One, to Mayor Keebler's point, regarding population versus, registration. And the precedent that's out there, as she points out earlier, and I have no reason to doubt this, that every other county has used, population data versus voter registration. But we are embarking on something that's also unique here. I don't know of another county that's done a mid-census, exercise that we're undergoing here. So most of them have, if you look back to at least the data we've seen so far, they're doing this within 2 years of the census and kind of following after what is a national trend of districting or redistricting when you've got census data, accurate, fairly current census data to go by. So I think that presents us with, a bit of a dilemma. And I think, it's not beyond the pale for us to look at both. And I would agree with the mayor. I think population data is the way to go, but I would also add the caveat that given the growth in the county, particularly in certain areas, that it would be derelict of us not to consider the voter registration as part of that. And further to that, I would say as the one member of the commission here that's, I feel, a special charge to represent the non-affiliated and independent voters of this county who make up a plurality of voters in this county. I believe it's over 40% last data I've seen. And so I will be speaking out anytime I think those voters are being disenfranchised. But I certainly agree that that should not be the highest priority for us. The last thing I would say is when we look at gerrymandering and communities of interest, I think one is polar opposite of the other. I think the whole reason communities of interest has entered this discussion everywhere districting takes place is because it's the antidote to gerrymandering. It's the antidote to gerrymandering. So I think we should keep that in mind throughout this process. Let's remember how the term gerrymandering came about. It was the governor of Massachusetts, Jerry, who came up with a map that looked like a salamander. You put the two together, you get gerrymander. Okay, that's your history lesson today, folks. Who doesn't know the term, where it came from. I'm sure we're going to avoid that problem. I don't think we're going to have any salamander districts coming out of this. But I think if we're serious about the community of interest thing, I'd like to suggest, further to Phil's point, we should look at this topic in terms of priorities, not pure definitions, because nobody has come up with pure definitions around this. But if we can agree on some priorities, then we got somewhere to start. And I think an easy one, which both Phil and Mayor Keebler has mentioned, is cities and the unincorporated areas around those cities. I think that should be the number one priority we're starting with, and then we can work down the list from there. And I've got something else I want to impart at the next meeting from the process I'd mentioned before, which went on back in 2018, 2019 from some folks who were trying to get the Citizens Redistricting Commission on the ballot in Oregon. And there was some interesting input along the way that suggests really what you want to do is look at data and data specific to existing districts that we've got. And that takes a lot of the politics out of it. But I like Phil's point, fire districts matter, maybe a little bit more than school districts. Anything that is tangibly working towards the commission's best benefit for governing should be part of that consideration too. So, sorry, I wrapped about 5 points there in one, but I just wanted to give those in there.
Thank you for the comments. Yes, Carol.
On the handout where it has the census and the registered voters, there's no totals at the bottom. And I guess I would like to see what is the difference between the census population and the registered voters and see if that gives us a clue as to where we are. Oh, you had it? Mine got cut off. Thank you. Never mind.
Yeah, it's about 35,000 difference.
35,000.
Yep.
Okay.
So as you look at the map, then you need about generically 39,000 in a district, and that equates to about 33,000 registered voters, if you wanted to use that as the comparison. And the discussion we had, I appreciate that. And our criteria, I think, is good. It's the precincts, there's 50, they need to be contiguous. So that helps, the community of interest. They got to border one another. Utilize existing precinct lines. not unreasonably divide communities of common interest and geography. Consider current growth patterns. And then no district shall be drawn for the purpose of favoring a political party or incumbent. No district shall be drawn for the purpose of diluting the voting strength of any language or minority group. And then population. And population is, you look at the census, you look at voter registration of the February 2022 and current voter registration data. And then maps can be drawn. We know we can't be perfect, but the idea is to have equal population size in each of the 5 with a 5% variance. The Secretary of State guidelines give you 10%. We are ambitious in saying we're going to try and do it within 5%. So that's our criteria. And I think the discussion on the community of interest is really, really helpful. I think we can now understand what people are thinking, but my thought would be we should move on then to see how then we apply what we've been talking about and our criteria to GS mapping. And we were, and as always, if we want to look at someone who's provided some maps and have Lee put that together and look at it, 4 of us, 4 of you, I'm not voting, say, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. That's the way we'll proceed. And I don't know if anybody in the group has begun that process, but if you have, now would be the time to talk about it and begin that process, and we can put it up on the map and use Lee's services and expertise.
So we're gonna sit here and just point out what we think should be on the map, or should we have submitted examples, or what are we doing here?
I would say if you have the ability to talk about which voting precincts you would put in certain areas. And if let me give you an example, if you allow me, just so we can put something on the map. And this would be in the Redmond area. If you look at your map, these precincts are contiguous. But what happens if you put, Lee, are you ready?
Could we get some guidelines? So what numbers of population are we trying to hit? Like some more help in how we're doing this, I guess.
Isn't it roughly 40,000 for?
Well, I would like the exact numbers. That'd be great. No, and we won't be exact between each of them, but if we're trying to get close, it'd be good to know what our target is.
That's fine.
So if you guys are asking for numbers, are you asking for numbers from the census population? What
That's what we're given to use, so.
there's a voter registration population and census population, so we're happy to.
I would like to know, what is the number of equal population districts?
So I have a question, Neil.
Yeah.
So I thought we were starting with not so much the population of the community. I think you were trying to make an example of what a community of interest might be. And you're just starting with a place. We could start somewhere else, but I just didn't hear that rather than that. I think that's a bigger thing for us today than the actual map, because we've seen some maps turned in by individuals that did them that were actually, really thoughtful, I think. But there could be more of that. But I think us getting a handle of what we're kind of getting in the same dialect. I was interested in just having you go forward with that rather than, so maybe.
Well, yes, I think he's proposing one with Redmond right there, isn't he?
No, I think he was, a community of interest, yeah, but I don't know why we're going on off track into.
Because if Redmond is a
into
community,
populations. But I'm just interested in hearing his example. That's all.
if Redmond is a community of interest, but it's not enough to meet the population threshold, I think we should understand that. So it'd be good to know what the population threshold is.
Yeah, so, but it's 40,000, then.
Point of
Right,
order,
like
Mr. Chairman, you've lost the meeting.
Okay, just a second. Lee, you had something?
Are we looking at?
The total population I have, or we have in the town, is 190,000 stuff. So we want to say, what we exactly want to take that at 5 and
So that'd be approximately $40.
Okay, I'll get my calculator.
And what I was
Can't-
doing in answer to your question is, yes, I was thinking of community interest, also looking at population and voters. And I picked the Redmond area because I think it's the easiest one to start with. And so I picked these precincts 17, 18, 28, 29, and 36. And I haven't added them up which way they went, but. Oh, yeah.
He said he'd
sorry.
stand up for like 10 minutes.
I'm sorry.
If you go by this map that he came up with, each district, he's got the population at the bottom. But going by census and by voters for each district he's come up with. And again, his variance is only by voters, between the high and the low is 2.8%, and by census, 1.2%. And that's going off his initial quickie map here with the colors and everything. So it gives you the population per district, the percentage and the numbers and how close they really are, going by just his quick map that we haven't even really looked at in depth yet.
All right, and you're talking about the map presented by Mr. Bryant or Mr. Tripp?
The gentleman on the end here, the computer guy.
This isn't his map.
This came.
This came from
This one, oh, whoever this one came from.
Mr. Was it Mr.
Yeah,
Bryant?
Mr. Tripp.
Mr. Tripp.
I think that's the one.
I think that came, this is Brian.
Yeah, that's
This is Brian.
Right.
This one came from Mr. Bryant, the other Mr. Bryant.
No,
So,
this one.
and Mr. Tripp's was accompanied with his letter. And so, which one were you referring to?
Mr. Bryant's.
You were doing Mr. Bryant?
Yes, because he's.
This one here.
Okay.
What is that population per district?
Okay, would the group like to start with what Mr. Bryant is up here, Lee?
This gentleman down here would like to give you that other paperwork that he had.
Didn't he email it to him?
No, can't do that right now. He did it in the public comment and we have it here. But he also submitted a different map. But what would the group like to do?
You know, I'd like you to go forward with the Redmond district personally, but
And which one of these would that be?
well, it's mostly this, but it's got other stuff to it. But if they just show the precinct that Neil has asked for, it'd be interesting to see where we get to with that population. It might be illustrative of where we're gonna deal with.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we go forward with what you started to go forward with and see where it goes.
Second that motion?
We have a motion, discussion?
Discussion is, maybe it's just me, but I don't know where we're going with this. You're gonna end up with 10 different maps. Are we just gonna argue between maps? If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Well, the purpose of what I was suggesting was, these precincts basically represent Redmond. And it's a place to look and see what would happen both on the community of interest, on the population, and on the voter registration. And you can move other precincts in and out, but it was just to serve it as an example of something to look at. Because all of you have the ability to do that if you want.
Right.
But I just think in the remaining 50 minutes, we should begin that process. And your other option would be you could use Mr. Bryant's or Mr. Tripp's to go forward with that. I mean, they put in a lot of time and effort to do this, but up to the group. So we have a motion and a second, other discussion. Melody?
Yeah, I'm not gonna oppose the motion. I just think this process would go smoother and be more transparent for the public if we would decide as a group and maybe direct the staff to draw a series of different maps that did different things. For instance, 2 districts at Bend, 3 districts at Touch Bend, whatever we wanted to do, and have staff draw those up for us as options and then evaluate those options. I just think that would be easier for folks to understand. I'm not gonna oppose going forward with what Neil has proposed right now, but I think that would be just a cleaner and easier way for everyone to understand what it is we're doing and how we're deciding.
And we can bring that up again by the end of the meeting today. I'll again ask what other things do you need and what direction you want to go. And if you want to direct staff to do 5 districts, but we need to give them some guidelines on that. That's something we can do. But, okay. So Lee, what is 17, 18, 28, 29, and
Wait, we
36?
didn't vote.
Oh, yeah, we should do that.
There was a motion. You did vote.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right.
You did 36?
Yeah, 36.
She doesn't have 36.
You need to include 36 too.
And 36.
And not 48.
All right, is that a correction? So what we can do is now that.
Oh, does he have 18? Oh,
Like I've demonstrated.
18 wraps around.
I'm gonna go ahead and run
Yeah.
this tool and we can find out.
it's okay.
48 wraps around.
So the brown area on the map is represented by this record here below 1. We're just calling that area 1. And the population is 33,295 and the sum of the voters is 27,034.
And what happens if you add 48 in there, which is a existing precinct, which is kind of gerrymandered, but it wraps around all of
Everything.
Redmond?
While that's running, we can just give you the proportional voter count. So for census, it would be 39,651. That's rounding up just a tiny bit. And then for the current voter registration, it'd be 32,763. So the 2 data points that you'll show up here, those are the 2 numbers striving for that exactly equal proportion.
And that would be including 48, correct?
No, she's telling us if you divide by 5, what the number is.
Okay. What would it?
Sorry?
For the total, for the population, if we want to be proportional, if we were exactly proportional, each district would have basically 39,651 people in
okay.
it. Or
39,000 what?
39,651.
And that's for that first column where it shows some population 20. The second column that shows some voters, that is the voter registration number. So that number, the striving for is 32,763 to make it exactly proportionally equal.
And again, to be clear about this, the population data is census data. And the voter data is the registration as of August. Okay.
Okay, Lee, and you have 45 included in that now?
48.
Or excuse me, 48?
Yes, 48's included.
Yeah, 48.
I don't know what we're supposed to be doing here. Are we just looking at numbers? Can we start overlaying other things on top?
I was wanting to see the numbers and I haven't seen them yet, so do we
Very
have?
hard to see. They're very gray.
Yeah, so maybe they'd be read into the record over there.
The sum population is 36,595. The sum voter population or count is 30,141 with the current selection.
So what that shows us is we're roughly 3,000 short on population and voter registration. So then you look and you have to be contiguous about what other precinct would you consider moving in there? Become a Bill.
Yeah, so this to me is a good example that, so 31 is going out highway, 126. and so it starts with Eagle Crest, so you're going towards Sisters from Eagle Crest. So to me, I look at this map, and so if I was gonna add one more precinct, if we're really getting one that's kind of Redmond centric, is that more connected to Redmond, or 19 is coming out the old Bend Redmond Highway and all of that area? Is that more, if that's kind of how I would look at prioritization, which one really is more connected if we're really making a district? You know, that's the kind of way I would be looking at some of these communities.
I think that's great. I think that's a great question. See, I think this is to me, the kind of particular thing we need to be getting into and talking about. And I would argue, you know, and there's things you can say both ways. Probably all of us know some people in Eagle Crest. Most of them that I know of do their shopping, do a lot of their business in Redmond. Some come out here, but you know, Redmond is closer, so that's where they do their business. So I would have thought that folks from Eagle Crest would find that's a community of interest for them. Not saying that the folks down off the old Bend Redmond Highway don't do the same. So this is the kind of stuff we're gonna have to get into, splitting hairs maybe.
So we would put
Carol.
31 in, and, oh, sorry, and see what the difference is in the number.
Right.
Or we put in 19 or whatever that one is.
Right.
And then see whichever one is closest and then decide which one in our mind has the most common community of interest.
Correct. Ellen.
Can this map overlay Redmond city limits, Redmond school district, anything like that?
Can you repeat that, please?
Could you overlay on this map the Redmond city limits or the Redmond school district boundaries?
Yes.
Maybe both of those?
Here's the city limits.
Maybe fire district, to Phil's point.
And then we can add other data, but I don't have it in the map, but we can certainly add data, and it helps to know certain scenarios, like Neil was saying, if you want to know, here's some criteria we'd like to start looking at, and we could probably save a little bit of time, but we can certainly add it in, so.
I think school districts are important.
How much time do you think you need, Lee?
Can we start with the easy question, I think that Carol was raising, which is, can we just check what the numbers look like with 31 in there versus with 19 in there?
Bill.
Before we do that, so not to short anyone, but 18 is also very connected to Redmond too. That's Terrebonne and, you know, that area. And so so that, to be fair, we would consider all three. I don't really know one way or another, but.
18 has 4,000, or let's see, yeah, 18 has 4,500 people. So that would put us over. 31 has 3,427 people. 19 has 1,645 people.
Right. So 31 would be the closest, and it would put us slightly over the population part of it.
But 18 gets pretty close too.
And yeah, 18 actually goes over too. It would put it at about 40,500. So they're both close. So goes to the question, okay, which they're contiguous, community of interest. What do you think?
So just as an example, could you put the Redmond Fire District, or I think it reaches out, I don't know exactly, Matt knows where they are, but you saw the maps, but I'm just kind of curious whether it goes north or south.
Lee, can you do the fire district too?
Yep, I'm adding them right now.
Okay.
The purple areas, and I'll change the symbology so you can see the different districts.
We also have our state districts on this map that we can use.
By the way, I want to thank staff for putting this together. The booklet is really well done.
As you can see, I gotta find the transparency, but if we toggle this yellow area, this is the Redmond Fire District.
You know.
Yes, Phil.
So just looking at it, it looks like the fire district goes into all three of those areas, basically. It goes into 31, it goes into 19, and I think it goes into 18, so it kind of becomes, so that doesn't help us much, I guess, if we're trying to get more communities of interest or whatever. That's my thought.
But it's good to see that.
Yeah,
That's what's helpful.
Here. So the city limits is this around the 1729, and the fire district is this larger dark black area outline.
And what's the brown area?
The brown area is what we grouped as what we're calling area 1 to start with. That would be our,
Okay.
that we're getting the counts on.
How close does 18 get us?
It should include 18.
What's that?
It gets you to 40. It takes you slightly over 39 is what we said, I think.
Well, 40, I mean, 40 is a pretty close round number to what we're looking for.
Not far off.
I think I think there's gonna be some difficulty when you start drawing other things and you realize you need more folks. I just think this all has to be done holistically. This is a good exercise, I think, but you need to do it holistically because you're gonna have to,
You're gonna make adjustments at
you're
the
gonna
end.
have to adjust. So I would love to like have us decide to direct staff towards making us a few options to look at and let them in their expertise sort of tinker with the numbers to get it as close as possible.
Is that a motion?
Sure.
What motion could be, what you?
Well, I like the idea that you just came up with.
Yeah,
If
sounds
we
like a
could
second.
submit some ideas. Pardon.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. And other discussion on this? Phil?
I'm not, I like that idea eventually. I don't see that as a priority today. I see it, if we're trying to get to the point where we have some consensus, if that's our goal, I'm really interested to see how we all think about these things a little bit. That may help us direct it. You're leading it, so you could see where our minds go. But we're not here to get to a 4-3 vote or whatever, really. We're trying to get everybody. So I wouldn't mind doing this exercise a couple other places to just start thinking about, like you get to South County, what there or within the city of Bend, or, just to see a little about how we think about those things. Because as an example, in Bend, the rural, there's a lot of area around it, but the city itself is not really necessarily all one cohesive thing, because the people that live on different parts of it have very little connection to other parts of it a lot of times. And so that may be that's just my first thought, but I don't know, I just think it's good, whether we have staff do it, we maybe as we come out of it, we'll know more what we want them to do, rather than just have them do it all. I mean, give them some direction.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Can I get a chance? Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, even within Bend, you're creating, even Bend is getting more of a disconnect within the city. I mean, the recent planning commission meeting, they were talking about the fact that with the road diets they're doing, the intent is to separate Bend and have it less transportation through flow. And create more neighborhoods within the different portions of Bend. So you're actually, even within Bend, it's disconnecting it from a unified city.
I guess I'm really glad I'm on this committee. And Mr. Cyrus, I'd invite you to come to a city council meeting where we talk about these issues. There is no intent to divide Bend. Actually, all of the work on our east-west corridors is about connecting Bend, right? And helping, and let me finish, and helping people travel in our city in a safe way, and helping people travel in more ways so they have more travel choice. So I think citing a controversial issue and trying to say we're a divided committee is sort of exactly why I'm here. Bend is a community of interest. Bend has been and will continue to work on connecting all parts of our city so that we can be a complete community. And I think we have a lot of things in common, and it makes me sad to think that folks think that if you live in a different part of Bend, you're not really connected to your neighbor across town. I don't agree with that. I know that we're going to have to, because half of the county's population lives in Bend, we can't have, one Bend district. That's not going to make sense. But I want to be really cautious that, to some of the comments we heard before, in this exercise, we are not dividing ourselves up, starting to say you're different than me and you're different than me and I need a separate commissioner from you. I think that's dangerous. I think we need to be talking about how to fairly get representation for everyone in this county, and that includes all the people of Bend. And I just appreciate if we would keep that in mind, instead of trying to bring up issues that we think are divisions already within our community.
Matt,
I'd like to respond to that. I guess it probably would have been good if the mayor had attended the recent meeting in which their transportation folks were, or the housing folks were explaining some of the different areas of the town and how they're attempting to regionalize even fire responses, et cetera. So all I'm saying is that from a communities of interest standpoint, even Bend has different communities of interest within the town, is all I was trying to point out.
Sure.
So-
Sure. I think don't assume that I don't know those things, and don't assume that because you're talking about a meeting, I don't know what happened at it.
I was
I
asked
don't-
earlier, see, Mr. Chair,
We don't
you're
need to
losing
do this.
control of the meeting again. Nobody's raising their hand and we have a certain individual who keeps popping up anytime she
all right,
wants.
raise your hand, please. Phil.
I'll call the question.
Okay, call the question. The question is to have staff draft maps for 5 districts to bring back to the next meeting. And that we can then look at, with et cetera. And so all those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign?
Aye.
No. Okay, it was 5-2 vote. So we have some time. Would you like to hear an idea about Sisters, since we're in Sisters today, what it might look like? Yes, Drew.
Before you do that, I would love to look at that, but I would like to add something to the motion we just passed, which is I would like to raise again this notion. We've heard from a number of members of the public that think we should be not forwarding just one proposal, but perhaps multiple proposals. And I would suggest, I'm happy with the idea of 2, but at least 2. And I think the second proposal should be, despite what you said earlier, I know the commission is asking us to do 5, but I think we should be looking at an option that gives us an at-large +4, which is, I think, potentially a very good compromise that we might get to at the end of the day, which many other counties have utilized. So I'd kind of like to just put that out there right now. If we're instructing the city staff to do maps of 5 districts, I would also like to propose that we instruct them to do some mapping around 4 plus an at-large.
Is that a motion?
It can be. Yeah.
I'll second.
And that's a second. Discussion on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it's completely out of order since it's outside the charge of this committee completely. And I don't think it should even be accepted as a motion because it is outside the charge of what we're doing.
Other comments or discussion?
I agree with that comment, that it's outside our charter.
All right, I'm going to allow the vote on it, but that is clearly what, when we went back to the commission and asked if they want 5 districts and no other option, that was the decision. So all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it fails 4-3. All right, Sisters, are you ready? Precinct 13, 14, 15, 19, 30, 31, 41, 37, and 45.
Can you go through those again, Neil?
Sure. 13, 14, 15, 19, 31, 41, 37, 30, 45.
A lot of area.
See if I got them right.
41, so that's to the east.
Yeah, probably 41's wrong.
I mean, 45.
45 I want, and I'm looking, trying to find 22.
Blackview.
Yeah, 22. But forget about,
41 off.
these need to be contiguous.
Am I missing anything here? 22?
And not 41.
And not 41.
That helps me see what I'm selecting and what might be missing. Map 41, we'll remove that. Did I need to add 31 or 18?
Yes, 31.
All right. So the numbers are the same for the Redmond first area, what we called area 1, and for this new area 2, which is that kind of pinkish color up there. The population is 20,714,
Way low.
and the sum of the voters are 19,157.
So then if you look at your Deschutes County map, and then on the one that shows the precincts, I think we need to get more population. The logical ones would be 49. Yeah, but only 600 people there, so it doesn't help very much. And then you could continue to go lower, or do you want to go, this is into some of the area that would be in Bend? Those are oh yeah, pick up 18, I'm sorry, that has to be included, that's to make it so, Ned.
So, is what we're doing, we're deciding Redmond is a community of interest and Sister a community of interest, and we're adding precincts to make the numbers work, whether they're part of the community of interest or not.
Well, and Sisters is it's a broader community interested than just Sisters.
No, I understand that. It's just that the process is what I'm thinking about. If we say Sisters is it, and then we're gonna add into whatever to make the number work.
Yeah, and then you have to decide, massage it on the, again, on the community interest things, if it blends that way, or is there a better way to do it?
So I'll give you an example. So what I see this is several communities of interest, which when you're adding. So for instance, you've got, it's 13, I think. I can't, well, I get it. We'll see here. 13 is right across Highway 97 from 41. And the thing they have in common is they're rural, kind of more rural farm settings. So they may have had more interest, for instance, this isn't the best example of this, but of like the fire maps when they came out as an issue. The county was involved with that sort of an issue. They might have, they're both covered by the same sheriff's department, and whereas these places in the city aren't. So they may, so the community of interest may be, or there'd also that, you know, it's the Tumalo region, and then expanding in there, there's commonality of roads. You know, when you look at expanding, Hunnell Road was added, that affected that area. When you made Deschutes Market Road better, it changed the transportation patterns across there. So I see it as kind of a layering of community of interest that makes sense. That would be a reason to say that. One of the reasons I'm not sure about 49 is 49 really doesn't have much connection to everything that's in 49 is the one going west out Skyliner. It's more connected really to the west side of Bend, because it's really the nature of the people that you know, the people that live out in 49 is still low population, but really there's no roads where that jagged line is between White and whatever Salmon calls that is. There's no roads between there, so they don't get between those two, 49. 49 is all out forested area. That's all I'm saying. So just
Yeah.
as an example.
Is there anybody else in the county that's done this process? For some other reason, like the library board?
Well, there's,
They have 5 districts, same issues, same ground rules.
I don't know if they're elected at large or by district.
I don't,
There's a Deschutes County Library Board
right,
and there's a,
but they had 5 districts. And they did it, with the same ground rules that we're using.
I don't know that.
I'm asking.
Should we find that out?
I think they asked that. And I don't know what's possible.
Library board. We have the 5 districts.
Right.
And it's all done by population, which irritated me because a significant portion of how Raymond would be in the district was tossed into Sisters. So they did it by population and that's how they put it together for the 5 districts.
Community districts.
That might be something to look at.
You can look at it. 7 on the library board.
There's 5.
5,
They said
5 districts.
5.
Well, it's a good, interesting point, about 49, you think it would automatically go into where the brown area is, but maybe the community interest isn't there. But if you don't have it, to get lower is impossible unless you go into Bend and take some precincts.
Yeah. No, I'm not necessarily against it. I was just saying the relative connection is different. I wouldn't be against it.
And 41, you mentioned, there.
So 41's right along 97 on the east side. And another thing it might have in there that might be kind of relevant, I think Pronghorn would be in there. So there you'd have both Eagle Crest, Pronghorn, you have resort, and Black Beach have resort kinds of issues that are come up, or, there's a community of interest to that possibly, keeping those together, because you don't have any other resorts in the north section.
Mr. Chair. But those still don't get you there population wise. And even if you look at 20 and 41, which I'm looking at on our list, those don't get you there population wise. 20 is 5,000 to 8,000, depending on whether you're looking at registered voter or population, and 41 is just another 1,500 on population. So you're still short. This is the dilemma that we begin to see when you start trying to put these together with contiguous areas.
But
it's not easy.
But you can go
Red Milk's
further.
low-hanging
So
fruit.
if you go, they've cut it off now, but so 12 is mostly a rural district as well. Because it's kind of northeast of Bend. Part of it's northeast Bend.
And it's 1,000 people.
12
So,
is, yeah.
yeah,
Well, we're just, if you got, you can throw it out. I'm just saying there is commonality of sorts. It's not like going into the.
Well, let's go ahead and add 41 and 12 and 49. That doesn't give us a lot of population or registered voters, but it's something.
I would leave 49 out. To Phil's point, I agree with him. I think that area is definitely more of a reflection of Bend, rural Bend, than the rest of the areas, simply because of the geography of the wilderness in there.
The only reason I suggest leaving it is that allows you to take a look at 11, 25, 7 and 3 at Bend if you needed to for population purposes.
Well, 11 and 20 are contiguous even without 49.
Maybe, yeah, it is. 11 for sure.
So adding 12 and 49 increase the numbers to the population 27,800 and the voters to 25,439.
Say that again, please, Lee.
The population is 27,800 and the voters 25,439.
I think if you don't start in the population center of the county, it's gonna get hard. You might actually want to start by looking at Bend. Because you could draw these up and kind of get them close, and then you get into Bend and you find you have way too many right?
Yeah.
And so I think also it's instructive to look at the House districts that, because they do divide Bend. We have 2 House districts that touch Bend, so that might be good for staff to look at. Again, I'm happy to say, here's some things staff to look at and draw us up some options. And not necessarily tinkering it with right here all the rest of today, but this has been instructive, I think, on
It's
how
not
it's
easy.
gonna be difficult.
Yeah, Redmond area was the easiest one to do. And so, and,
But then given, if we might have to balance out, it might
Yeah.
have to change, right?
yeah, well, you're gonna have to go into
Yeah.
Bend. There, just from a population standpoint, registered voters, there's no way to avoid that. So. Anyway, we could,
So the population number that you just gave us and the voters registration number, only 2,000 apart. That means there's only 2,000 kids in that district.
That's the population from 2020.
Yeah, that's,
So-
no, I struggle with that. I like data that I can count on. That's accurate and current and versus Portland. I've used Portland state data for years. It's pretty good. It's the best, but it's also a guess.
There's also the American Community Survey that we could look at, which I think does census tracts. I was gonna look into that more and maybe send it to staff as a possibility.
And to respond to your comment, the population 2020, so obviously that's older data and some areas have experienced better growth or greater growth. And so of course, numbers are gonna for the voters are current and they're gonna be potentially larger in some precincts where there's been a lot of growth, like 49 out west of Bend.
Wait, I think you only have half of 41 in your count.
Okay.
Half of 12.
And then 12 actually has 2 parts. I don't know if you put in, so there's another part of 12 below. That little odd shaped thing to the right is 12. They divided it because that's divided either a congressional district or House district runs through it.
We'll read from the tool now. All right, with those additions added in there. The number for the population is 27,900. I'm just rounding there. And the voters, 25,500.
so you'd still be $12,000 to $13,000 short on population and a similar amount on registered voters, a little less. Anyway, that, I just wanted you to start thinking along these lines, because this is what we need to do as we move through this process. And so, next week already, it won't be long, the staff will come up with some ideas on this and give us another basis to begin to have discussion on. Well, so let me get this straight on additional information that the committee has requested. Ned, you suggested looking at what
Library board did.
library, and you know what year they did that? Okay.
Last 2 years.
All right, is the group in agreement, consensus to get the library information to see how they did it?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. You know, did they reapportion in 2021?
They probably did.
Yeah.
I imagine they did. So I hope it's fairly current.
Yeah.
Okay. And other information.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that staff feels like you have enough direction to bring back some maps. I think if we're all agreeing that maybe cities and urban and incorporated areas are common interest zones, is there anything else we want to tell staff are common interest areas when they're drawing us some maps to try to avoid dividing those? You saw us just now doing cities basically in some other unincorporated areas, but I want to make sure staff knows what to do. Bring us back, what, 3 maps? Is that what we want? I think we need to direct them a little bit.
Carol.
You suggested starting in Bend because that has the biggest population, so I would suggest that maybe be one of the maps, that they start there and then work their way out.
Okay.
That makes sense, everybody?
No, I'm gonna get clarification on that. You want us to use all of Bend as one district? Okay, but yeah, I took that note. I'm gonna just read back what I have captured of things that potentially that we should be looking at, and then would love more feedback if we're missing something. So I have looking at house districts, start with the population center, the library board, cities and unincorporated areas. So that's what my basis for the starting point so far. Did I get everything that's been discussed?
So if you're doing Bend as part of the map, I disagree with Melanie about the city of Bend. I'm more, I've lived on both sides. I think it's growing increasingly where people on one side have hardly ever been to the other side because of the traffic problems, et cetera. And I live on the east side, but I've lived on the west side. And now when you go to the west side, I just think one split should be down north and south, because I think that's more interested in terms of what's going on, the community of interest, et cetera, than north and south, my opinion. I guess we could try that too, but I just think if we're gonna get directions, that is one place we're going is if there's enough people in Bend to do 2 districts plus district to others, there's ways to look at that. So I don't know how we should get our.
I think the way to look at that is when we come back with the maps and where you see roughly 25,000 people that are in Bend, 21,000 registered voters that are going to have to go in some of the other districts. That would be a good time to look at that community of interest and what your concern is.
Well, but I'm wondering why we're having to draw maps then now, because we could do what we did to talk through these things to give directions. That's, I guess,
Why not ask the staff to bring us a couple of different versions? And one of them can be if we're looking at east-west, one of them could be if we're looking at north-south. And so we can look at different versions and the public can see them and understand them and react to them. I think that is mostly my point is this is very opaque and sort of unpredictable what's happening here today. So it'd be great that'd be great. Let's look at that. Let's look at this. Let's have a couple of examples because those are where the greatest variations are going to be likely is in the city of Bend. And I think that's important for people to see what those might be and to be able to give us input on those, right?
So basically, we're asking
Yeah.
staff for their opinion of communities of interest.
Well, we're directing them now. That's why
Yeah,
generally reading it
but
back.
how do they come up with what we're gonna agree on as a community of interest?
well, like,
I'll go
so
first.
kind of along that theme, I was just thinking about one of the comments our last meetings was put the river as a community of interest. And I don't know if I agree with that exactly, but it's a concept. So in the city of Bend, is that a focal point? I don't know. I'm just saying that's stuff it seems like we should talk through the communities of interest about these different, we've done 2 parts of the county some, trying to tie things. We haven't done the rest of it. It seems like that. I don't know.
I don't think at this point you can have the staff determine what the community of interest is.
Right.
But that's how they have to do it.
Well, what they can give us options as to what precincts would need to go where to balance out this particular area or another. But I think it's up to this group to say, okay, and does that align with the community of interest? Drew, you had something.
Well, just to Ned's point, she just read back to us what they're gonna take away. Now, if you disagree with that, or you want to add something to that, let her know now. Because staff are gonna take what we give them now as a starting point, and I would emphasize starting point. As the chair said earlier, we're really at the beginning of this process. But I think it gets us somewhere, but if you want some other criteria, put it forward. I'm perfectly happy with the criteria that we're starting with here right now.
Jen.
Yeah, and I would just want to clarify that I don't think staff would feel comfortable defining communities of common interest, but we will take the feedback that we've heard, including this last one that I didn't read out, which was a couple different examples of Bend, 1 north and south, 1 east and west for splits for considerations as starting points, and probably, and I'll let other people pipe in here, but we'll start with what we've been given and do it strictly by numbers as as a general rough area to get you guys started, and then you guys can do the deep work. It sounds like that's what the direction is towards us. At least that's what I'm interpreting that. So if there's different thought processes on that, please let us know.
And you will look at the library board thing?
Sorry, Ned, I didn't
And
get
you will
that.
consider the library board, what they did?
Yep, we got that written down, and we actually have the map already pulled up here.
Because I just heard that we've agreed on certain things. I'm not sure what it is we agreed on, so maybe you can say what we included. Not you, but your, I don't know your name.
Drew?
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
probably
what,
better to ask
what Jen just read back to us. So if you needed to hear it again, I think that's the list right now. If you want to go through it again, Jen.
Yeah, here's our starting point, and not saying that we're gonna have an individual map for each of these, but we'll definitely draft several maps for considerations based off of number counts and these considerations that I've heard so far, which are house districts, starting with population center, library board, which we have the map already pulled up here, cities and unincorporated areas grouped together, and a couple different examples for Bend, split north and south, and split east and west. That is the directive we have so far going forward. And again, I'll just reiterate, we're not looking to define any further communities of common interest. I think that's left up to the work of the DMAC.
Impressive. Great.
So, and if you have other things that you think of afterwards before the next meeting, if you could steer those through me.
Okay.
Because then, one, public records, but also, is there a consensus on a new item? Do we want to do it? Do you want to do it? And rather than, so the staff is in the position of, do I do this or I not do this?
Right.
So, and, we have very good staff, but they have other jobs too. So we have to be careful in that regard.
So, the next meeting's in Redmond and the one after that's in Lapine. Do we want to kind of encourage people to come to those to talk about the ideas we come up with, as starting points? Is that I mean, at the point of reaching out to the communities would be to kind of see, like, you come here, it's, what do people here think? That's my idea of these outreach meetings, is try to encourage people from those areas to.
Well, and I think as soon as this group says, okay, here's a map, we're considering it, you're gonna get a lot of comment.
Then we'll come back around and go to all three committees, all the four or five communities.
That part of the program will expand. Yes,
So
Melanie.
does staff think you'll have this ready by next week, or will it take longer than that?
Yeah, we already blocked time on our schedule for tomorrow, so
Okay.
we'll see how productive we are. We'll try our best.
And when would the packet with the example maps be posted?
Monday.
So 2 days before. Okay.
That is
That's
the
the week
timeline
to-
that we're operating on, but
That's
I'm,
the
yeah.
week-to-week meeting schedule, yeah.
Yeah,
pretty tight.
it's really tight, with a lot of work in between. So that is, I'm not going to guarantee that's exactly how that's going to flesh out, but that is our intent. And we put some significant work time on our schedules for tomorrow. So we'll see what happens.
And so no one goes on vacation, in the next month and was down at your office. Yes, Phil.
Could we add another one, the public lands to the maps, just, as an overlay somehow, so we can, because a lot of the lands we're looking at really aren't populated.
Yeah.
And so.
Or search beyond, is
Yeah.
consensus to do public
Well,
overlay?
You mean just visually as an overlay? Because we can't, we're doing
Yeah,
people,
so
not land. So
because I can see that people living along the national forest lands, and then there's the BLM lands. I just think it'd be good to first put perspective all that. Because that's an interest that drives many of us to live here, so.
Would you like to see that overlay?
I mean, I like the overlays.
It's not a problem to do with it. Nick?
Yeah, you're right. We can turn layers on and off, and just looking at the library board district maps, for example, they have all the major roads, which is really helpful because you can see some of the boundaries, some of the precincts, et cetera, end of the road, and it's a natural boundary. So there's a lot of layers we can add, either on the draft maps, the series of maps we bring, or at the meeting, we can turn layers on and off.
Yes, just a reminder from last meeting. So we have a lot of data. So here we have a lot of boundary data for city limits, county boundary. We got all kinds of tax districts, road districts, school boundaries, unincorporated communities, urban growth boundaries, so on. We've got all types of land data, water, public lands. So if, like you saw earlier, trying to add the or the fire district in there, we have some great software. I can add all kinds of stuff and we can make it look different colors and labels and stuff, but that takes time to just like add it and do it on the fly like we were doing earlier, and then, you know, clicking buttons and waiting in silence for some of that. So it'd be very helpful to know if there's certain layers that you really want to look at as overlays, like you'd like to look at the school district or you'd like to look at the fire districts, public lands. It'd be helpful to kind of get a list of or agreement on what some of those would be, where it could be kind of prepared in advance to be able to have it on the map, sort of ready to go and a little more helpful for you.
Yeah, I think,
Ned,
I think that's really important because otherwise, I live in the data world. You got so much data, you can pick any answer you want and make it work with the data. So that unless we come up with some kind of a consensus of what we're generally looking at, you got an impossible task. You can't just use all the data. It just doesn't work.
yes, Melanie.
I think public lands is good. I think school districts are good. City boundaries doesn't seem too hard to do. Those are the main ones for me.
Okay. Anything else?
Don't bang into.
We're gonna adjourn. Let's see each other again next week.
Too hard.
So on the con.